Hello, this is Mario Serafero, Editor-in-Chief at xda-developers.com, Flashaholic in recovery, and I'd like to welcome you to the third XDA Android podcast. Our goal is to cover the latest in Android tech news from an enthusiast perspective, and I'm joined here today by Redditors, editors from XDA, and a special guest from YouTube as well.
Ash here from C4Tech, and I'm glad to be here, Mario.
My name's Superrich, aka Brett from Android. Pleased to meet you all.
And my name's Corey Fiak. I'm from the Android subreddit, and I'm also an Android developer.
Daniel Marchena from the Android subreddit and an Android enthusiast.
All right, and that's going to be everyone. So the first thing that we want to talk about this week is probably the biggest news. There was a release of a new operating system version for Android, Marshmallow. And so people are trying that out. The biggest features with that, we have the Google Now on Tap, permissions, fingerprint API, auto backup features. Those are probably the biggest headliners. I know that, Daniel, I think you've had a chance to try it out. What are your impressions on it so far?
My impressions have been pretty good of it so far. Doze is working as advertised. It was a little bit broken for me in the third preview, but it's been working as advertised now. I did have some problems with the app backup system. They weren't clear on whether or not if you had apps backed up from the previews, if they would restore on the standard version. They didn't for me. So that actually took like about 3.5 hours just to restore my apps. Otherwise, it's been running fairly well so far, and I haven't had too many complaints about it. My active display on my Nexus 6 is a little bit messed up. It toggles itself on, every 20 or 30 seconds, so I had to switch that off. But it's been pretty fluid so far.
So one of the things I'm really curious about, Google Now on Tap. Have you been able to play around with that any?
Yeah, I was playing with the Now on Tap on the third preview, and then I played with it now. I'm going to be honest, I'm really disappointed in it. It's really powerful for like creating calendar events from things in text messages and stuff, but it doesn't use the knowledge graph that Google has. So, if you search somebody like Marquez Brownlee or something on Google, you get a cool little card on the right side of the page, and it shows you some info about them and where you can find them. When you use Now on Tap and it finds a person or a place or something, it shows the name, and then it shows like a little icon for Twitter and YouTube and Instagram, but it doesn't give you any of that information, like their height or their age or any of that kind of cool stuff. So I'm kind of disappointed in it, but I think it's something Google's going to end up fixing in the long run and patch.
Yeah, do you try it with various contexts? Do you try it if it worked, as advertised with different movie tickets, baseball games, whatever? How do you try it? In which situations have you tried it, and how do you find that it worked?
Most of the things that I've used it in are in like on Google Plus, if I'm just scrolling through it, or if I have a chat conversation where we're trying to meet up. That was actually where it showed the power of it. I had a text message conversation where somebody was like, hey, we're going to meet here at 7:30, and then in a different text message they went and said, we're going to meet at this place. And because both were on the screen at the same time, it tied the two together from the same contact, and it asked to create an event based on the time and the place that were in two separate messages. So that was really cool, but I haven't had the opportunity to search things like baseball teams or football teams or anything like that so far. It's mostly social networks, websites, or text messages.
The other thing, permissions. Have you done any messing around with revoking any permissions for specific apps?
So I haven't really done too many things with revoking permissions. I did do it on the previews with some of the legacy applications, and typically it just like fails to work. So if you revoke the camera permission for Instagram, it just won't show you the camera preview. I didn't have any abnormal crashes or anything. I am kind of disappointed in the way Google implemented some of the permission system. For instance, if you do a fresh wipe and install, you know how the Google Dialer since like 4.4 has had the cool feature where it'll give you reverse lookup when people are calling you, and it'll search places when you're dialing. That's off by default, even though it used to be on in the past. And then in order to get it working, you have to allow the permission for it to search you nearby. So it's something that I think a lot of people are going to end up missing out on until they figure out that the feature was turned off in Marshmallow and you have to re-enable it and allow the permission. So I wish they would have allowed some of their built-in applications to have permissions, or at least alert you when you first opened it that, hey, this was working, it's no longer working, go ahead and grant the permission and it'll be working fine again. So it's been kind of disappointing in that aspect of it, but it's been working pretty good so far for the apps that are updated for it.
You also mentioned that it took you a while to restore your backed up applications. I noticed that too. It also I heard reports that it takes a while to back up application. I heard multiple reports from people at the XDA office What do you think the problem is there? Because do you think it's a matter of the servers? I also heard that the ETA algorithm just went nuts and it would just jump around in two different instances for two different people.
Yeah, so what I've noticed is with the previews, when I would reinstall, because I always did fresh wipes on the previews just to start from a fresh base, I would notice that when I would go to restore my applications, you'd get a cool notification. It would tell you, like, this is app number 10 out of 120 that are restoring, and it would work through them. And no matter what you were doing on the device, it would continue working in the background. It did that for like 10 applications when I went to the base Marshmallow, and then it seemed to resort to the legacy way, which was just kind of running Play Store in the background and then would just be downloading the applications. If you went into the Play Store, it would stop the download. If you started using your phone, it would stop the download. Ultimately, to get all my apps installed, I had to drop the screen brightness to minimum and set the timeout to 30 minutes and just leave my phone charging with the screen on. And it took about 2.5 hours to install all the applications. So it was disappointing, but it seemed like it resorted to the legacy way. And none of my data restored, though, just the apps.
And what phone are you running the Android M on?
I'm running it. It's a fresh install on a Nexus 6, and then I have an update on a 2013 Nexus 7, and I actually just updated my Nexus player this morning using the factory images too.
And the 6, it doesn't have a fingerprint sensor, does it?
No. All I've got is the smart lock and all that kind of things. Ash, have you had any run-ins with the features that we have with Marshmallow now, or?
No, I've not really got my hands on it yet. I don't have a Nexus device in house right now. I should be getting the 5X or the 6P soon, so hopefully I'll get to it then.
Yeah, but
Here's
you,
the
I
big
mean,
thing
you did get a taste of them with the OnePlus 2, because they advertise, oh, we have Marshmallow features, which in reality is just the permissions and the dark theme, which they didn't actually make it to the default. It's still like in a hidden feature, I guess, right?
The theme's not hidden. The dark theme's available. That's
The dark
default.
theme. The dark theme's default feature in Marshmallow.
Not Marshmallow. I was talking about OnePlus 2.
Oh no, yeah, of course. That's the thing. Like they advertise it as a Marshmallow feature, but it was still very much in the dev preview, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I was getting to. They had all these features and the USB Type-C, which we still can really enjoy with 3.1 speeds yet, and well, that was it. But other than that, I think that the granular permissions in Marshmallow, that's going to be one of the top-selling features. I know that a lot of people at XDA they love using all these different exposed modules and different methods and custom ROMs to get the most out of their phone, the privacy, the battery life, all those things that companies obviously, well, they really like to take over the applications in that sense. But personally, I'm very excited for Marshmallow. I know that it's coming to a few of my devices, which leads me to availability. What do you guys think about availability? Brett, I know that you have a few devices that are going to get it. Oh, wait. Oh, you have the Note 3. You might be out of luck from what we've seen, huh?
Yeah, it's that much of a pipe dream away from me that I'm trying not to get too excited because like I'm just barely about to get Lollipop on the Note 3. I was going to ask Daniel though, one of the features on the battery optimizations was I think it was showing the current milliamp draw per apps. Was that a feature of Marshmallow there? And was that something you noticed for that one?
I know it was in the dev previews. I'm actually going to pull it up right now and see if it made it to final. I forgot about that, but it will show you the milliamp draw, and it actually is showing it in the final preview as well. It tells you how much milliamp hours your screen is drawn and things like that.
I think that's a good way moving forward to show users, okay, this app is really draining a lot of battery, because it used to be every time before that percentage, and it was percentage relative. So let's say your screen might use 50% while it's on maximum, but you don't have a grounding of what is 50% in real terms. And a lot of people got confused that there'd be system idle might take up 80% or something, and that's a good thing, but they can't understand that in a draw perspective.
Yeah, that's a good thing, and it kind of goes with like the showing you how much memory each application's using as well. In the right hands, it's going to allow people to optimize their devices without having to worry about rooting and installing a whole bunch of third-party applications. And the same thing with the battery draw too. And to go further on what you were saying with the dark theme, Mario, it was removed actually, I think like in Dev Preview 2 or 1. They have found traces of it as called like a night mode. I think it's going to be something that's going to come with either 6.1 or 6.0 per 1, whichever Android version is going to release with the Pixel C. I think is when we might end up seeing that return with the multi-screen as well.
Yeah, right. I don't have a Nexus device in here. I was luckily I could get some impressions from people for our features on XDA. But yeah, I do remember that they did find traces in the source code of Marshmallow. Hopefully, it come in future builds. But well, I guess OnePlus does one up Marshmallow after all.
Yeah, and native layer support is still missing as well. That's still something you have to root in order to enable. So it seems like a lot of the things that people were really excited for, to see finally in stock Android, it seems like they just have the code there but didn't decide to release it with Marshmallow. I think they wanted more of a stable build before they started adding a whole bunch of cool stuff.
Actually, the fingerprinting is something that I'm really interested in, especially with these new Nexus devices. With my Galaxy S6, that has a fingerprint sensor on it, and honestly, I've gotten so used to it. It'd be very difficult to go to a phone that doesn't have that anymore. And the important thing is Android's adding these APIs into Marshmallow, which is going to allow a lot of different other device manufacturers to take advantage of that without having to figure out the software side. They just have to throw on a fingerprint sensor and they're good to go. So I think we're going to see a lot more phones with fingerprint sensors because of the push from Android.
I agree with you. One of my favorite features of using my iPhone is being able to log into my Capital One application, log into PayPal, and a lot of other things just using my fingerprint and not having to type in my password every time, or it'd be unsecure once you're past the lock screen. So I'm really excited for that to make it into Android.
Yeah, me too. Especially with one of the phones I get a review, I've got to sign into so many apps, and that's gonna simplify stuff a lot. So looking forward to it.
And if they're able to fix their data backup things with Marshmallow, you should have a much easier time restoring on different phones too.
Exactly.
One funny thing that happened to me when I was restoring is Netflix uses the new smart lock for its password, and while I opened the Netflix app, Google Play Services crashed, and then it never signed in automatically. So I definitely think they were having some day one bugs with the whole smart lock and restoring passwords and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, there's one more thing that we're getting a new Android Marshmallow, but it's not the only OS, the new OS in town. We have new Windows 10 devices coming up. The Lumia 950. We have the Lumia 950 XL. You had this great Microsoft event just yesterday, and it was amazing for you guys watching probably 2 days ago. But I think that they really hit the mark with the devices that they announced. The new Surface. Obviously, an iPad and Pixel C competitor. We have the new devices. The Lumia phones are greatly spec'd. Like the specifications are spot on. It doesn't really have that many compromises. And I was just wondering, why can't Android OEMs have that degree of non-compromise as this latest Lumia phone? So I was wondering what you guys think about that. Ash, what's your opinion on Lumia phones?
I am looking forward to the ones they announced. Hopefully, they make it available here so that I can get my hands on them and check them out. Usually, I end up skipping Lumia's because of availability issues in India. We don't get it till a lot later. So.
Yeah, one thing that I liked about the Microsoft things, like you said, is they kind of threw everything at these devices, and I think that's something that a manufacturer that produces the OS and is producing the hardware as well is able to do. Unlike somebody like a Samsung or Motorola, they're having trouble doing that. But you see Apple and Microsoft being able to pretty much throw everything in the kitchen sink, and I'm really kind of hoping that Google ends up doing that as well maybe next year with the next Nexus devices.
Yeah, there's something that's definitely something to love about Microsoft and Apple for that matter. I mean, I've handled only middle range Lumia phones. They're very popular in Argentina. They sell for really cheap prices, And I've handled them, and I just can't believe that they're running all such weak processors. I mean, they're mid-range phones, but they very responsive. They're very snappy. I do like what they do with their AMOLED screens. The very smart optimizations with the themes to save battery life. So when you think about it, the only compromise when you put this phone you compare with Android phones, I guess, is the missing gigabyte of RAM, because it has 3 GB, but it's got the A10, it's got the 808 for the smaller version, QHD screens for both, which is kind of counterproductive, I think, on the smaller variant, which is running the 808 as well. But other than that, they're very fairly spec phones, and when you factor in that it's the OS that it's running, you're like, wow, these phones are probably going to be pretty good. The camera's also good. There's been some Lumia devices with great cameras, like camera phone Lumias. So I'm really curious. I wouldn't jump from Android, but what do you think, Corey? What do you think about these devices? Do you have a very high-end flagship? Will you ever consider one of these?
I've always been impressed with the Lumia devices. I think they're a bit underrated because of the operating system, and honestly, that's what it comes back to. Is I'm not going to be able to consider it just because I don't want to move to a Windows Phone OS. But if you look at the hardware, it looks really good. The specs are great. The options in terms of expandability are nice to see. And the camera is one of the best in class. Lumia has had a long-standing tradition of having very high-quality cameras in them, but it runs Windows, so that's the only thing for me.
I don't mind that it's also the battery. It's 3,000 milliamp, and it's changeable, and USB Type-C. I mean, it's a lot of features that make you go, I wish this all was in a phone. Even the 808, I'd almost say that's a positive. Like Windows 10's gonna handle that really well. It's really impressive to see all that stuff happening. And like they mentioned earlier about Microsoft handling, being a bit like Apple where they do the hardware and the software. I think they had the most dramatic product reveals. Like it sounded like I was watching Interstellar with like the wow in the background. I don't know what you guys thought of that as well.
Yeah, it was definitely quite a cinematic product reveal. They do that a lot. I mean, if you look at the Apple product announcements, you have the iPad flowing out in space, reflecting the sun. Well, Johnny Ive just talks into your ear, telling you how good it is and how revolutionary it is, and how they reinvented the wheel again, and how it's their best yet, which it should be considering it's new. But other than that, I think that it's a very good pair of flagships, and I do like their approach that they're keeping the same specifications other than the 808 with different form factors. And if you look at this year, there's something very curious that I've noticed, and is that flagships, despite the age of compromises and whatnot, they've been proliferating. There's many more flagships in the sense that they're splicing them up, they're splitting them in two. You have two Galaxy S, you have the Note 5 and the S6 Edge Plus, which is just like another phablet. So two phablets, and then Sony does the same. They splice up the C5 into C5 Premium, the Moto X, Moto X Style, Moto X Play. The OnePlus is going to get the OnePlus Mini, OnePlus X, whatever they're going to call it. They just keep doing that. And I do like that at least they're keeping the form factors. Ash, would you prefer phablets? Do you prefer smaller phones? And what's your opinion on so many flagships, and the flagships of this year, really? What's your opinion, your take on flagship? Because you've reviewed most of them.
Yeah, I generally prefer the smaller form factor, something around 5 inches, 5.2 maybe. And yeah, I'm happy that, not really happy that there are multiple phones, because that's more work for me, more phones to review. But then again, I'm happy that there are at least some manufacturers trying to come up with offer us different form factors. Basically, like what OnePlus is probably going to do. It's rumored to be a little smaller. So, and again, Sony with a Z5 compact. So I'm happy that there's finally some phone that's smaller without any compromises, basically in terms of specs. Because traditionally with HTC and Samsung, if you look at the mini lines, it's mid-end specs just because the phone's smaller. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, speaking of reviews, so many people want to get into reviewing phones and whatnot, but sometimes it's more trouble than it's worth. Well, not that it's worth, but it's more trouble than it seems. It's just a lot of testing, particularly if you're doing technical review. I try to do very long reviews. If you can check them out at XDA, they're very long, very detailed, and they take me a lot of time. I do 2 weeks of testing, and I write my review throughout. Um, but yeah, I just think that you have any reviews coming up, Ash, that you might want to spill the beans on?
I just got this
Alright.
today. So I'm working on the Moto X style right now, and yeah, so that's the style should be next. I've got a Mi 4C coming in as well, so those are going to be the phones I'll be working on currently.
All right. Um, uh, Daniel, I know that you really you really do not like the big form factor, do you? I'm just kidding. You like big phones.
I have a Nexus 6. You really can't go much bigger than this. But with what you were talking about with the flagship, it really makes me wonder if it's making the buying choice harder for consumers. Corey, you had mentioned earlier when we were talking that you have an upgrade coming up. Are you finding it more difficult to choose a device because they're kind of splitting their flagships in two instead of having one, spearhead device?
In a way, it makes it more difficult. I mean, there's a lot more options out there. You have to figure out, okay, well, I've got the S6. Now, do I want to look at the Note 5, or do I want to look over at something that LG's got? But in the end, I'm not going to advocate for less options. I mean, I think Android is built on the fact that, hey, you want a big phone, you can get a big phone. You want something that's got expandable storage, you can do that. You want the best camera out there, you can get that phone. And I think that having a bunch of choices is part of what makes Android so great. So I don't think we want to necessarily. I mean, it is interesting that all these companies are splitting into multiple product lines, but I'm going to contend that that's actually a good thing.
Is the V10 one of the devices that's on your radar, or?
Potentially, I have to look at it. I don't know how much of an upgrade it would be as to what I have. I mean, we really don't have any new processors or anything around the corner, so I really like my 7420 right now.
Yeah, well, it's got 2 screens, and one of them is about this big. That's my thing with the V10. I think that much of its functionality, you can just do that with an AMOLED screen. I mean, in reality, it's just a relocalized mode of display when it's off, and it does. I mean, it does. I guess it does help with multitasking because it's not taking any screen real estate when the screen is on. But then again, is it going to be really useful for stuff like multitasking, hitting all the way to the top with your thumb to switch applications? And there's so many navigation options now. I personally love pie controls, and pie controls are so much better than anything else to me. So I don't know. I think that it's kind of like a gimmick in a way that the S6 gimmick, at least the S6 Edge gimmick, at least it was a very attractive gimmick. You know what I mean? Ash, what do you think about the V10?
The V10, I wasn't really impressed with the placement because I don't find it being helpful to me when it's right there at the top. With the S6 Edge, like you said, you get it from the sides. So that, especially with the Edge Plus, again, they let you change where you actually pull the edge panel from. So again, helps me with using the phone single-handed. And over here, with quite a large phone, having to reach up to the top of the display, like you said again. It's something an AMOLED can do. Plus these gimmicks, and the gimmicks don't really sound great to me right now. But then again, when I look at the product, maybe I'll fall in love with it. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to love about it, though. The specifications are great. I'm not sure about the screen. I've been disappointed by LG screens time and time again, and even their quantum display kind of disappointed me. And in first person, they praised color accuracy and whatnot. It was really not that color accurate. But 4 gigs of RAM. You got the 808. You got big battery. It just seems like a good device all around. It doesn't have anything that would deter from it. Plus, they said that they're gonna work on the camera software, correct? And that's really what LG needs. The camera software needed work. That they constantly push the boundaries with in terms of camera hardware, OIS and laser autofocus and whatnot. In their phones and their flagships, some of the first adopters. So, I think that's what I'm really excited to see, because if without those software tweaks, the hardware can already match the S6 and the Note 5, then I want to see what they got on there. and cameras are getting much better in phones right now.
Especially when you have two of them sitting in the front. I still don't quite get what LG was doing, why it has two cameras up front. Something that's kind of disappointed me this year, in the past we've been familiar with the two device cycle, something a massive devices in the beginning of the year, and then the end of the year you get new devices, and typically those devices came with new processors. But this year we're seeing the same processors being rehashed time and time again. The 808 and the 810, I mean, they've been around since the very beginning of this year. So I think for a lot of consumers, especially ones who are looking for the next best thing, it's kind of disheartening to not see a next generation 820 or Samsung to improve the processor in the Note 5. Does anybody else feel the same way that I do regarding that it kind of, this year kind of took a standstill almost?
Yeah, we haven't seen a new processor in quite a while. I was hoping that the Note 5 would upgrade the Exynos 7420. It didn't, and it didn't have to. That's the thing, because everyone else was stalling, so it just didn't have to do it. And I think that's something it just really shows at which point we got. And you look at past years, and personally I feel like the Note 4 was one of the last big throughout upgrades to a phone, because it upgraded pretty much everything. It didn't have that many compromises. It was just generally great, and I still love that device. It still performs great. I can't really hold it now that I'm used to the Note 5 and it feels so good, but I do understand what you're saying, and we see so many flagships. Like we said, they're splicing them up. There's more and more flagships, but I don't know. I just feel like there's something that's missing. You know what I mean? I just don't know. Brett, you haven't upgraded in a while. What do you think is going to make you pull the trigger?
Yeah, I was just going to say briefly, like with all these upgrades going on, it kind of feels like we've plateaued a bit and almost fallen over. I mean, we've got QHD, that was probably the last resolution upgrade, and it'll probably be the last good one to happen for a while. The next upgrade will probably be for VR and not so much for using it personally itself. It's more going to be, and RAM, do we really need more than 3 gig at the moment? And with some of the, like, Samsung are really not making use of that RAM, killing apps all extremely aggressively. And the CPU, it's like, well, have I seen a really big upgrade besides the 7420, the Exynos? Not really, like it's we need the big killer app or big killer thing that makes use of that hardware to happen. I don't know. It kind of feels like everyone else is in the same camp when they look at the phones and go, okay, it's another 810 based phone.
Exactly.
Wow, what else has it got? And luckily the LG V10 and some other things are going, well, let's try another screen, let's try another camera, let's do other random stuff. And some of them are going to stick, some aren't. That's the advantage of Android.
Yeah, so with regards to upgrades, again, like Mario, you brought up the Note 4, and that got me thinking, like, the Note 4 is still a great device, and every time I pick it up, what I feel is the first thing that comes to my head is this would be so much better with the new touches on it. That kind of brings me to the updates aspect of it. Yes, there are so many flagships coming out right now. How do the brands handle updates? Samsung still haven't fixed their memory leak issues. It's been about 6 months. And of course, Motorola as well right now choosing not to upgrade push out the M upgrade for the Moto G. So what do you think about it?
I agree with Yash. The Note 4, it was one of my favorite devices, and I had to put that one away because of the horrible TouchWiz experience on it. Now, I have heard that it's gotten a little bit better with 5.1.1. I haven't used 5.1.1 on the Note 4. Mario, I heard you had some experience with that. How have you found it? Have they fixed up some of the problems, or is it still the problem it was when Lollipop first launched on it?
No, it definitely did get much better. Everyone who owns the Note 4 up until recently, unless they unboxed it and updated to the latest right away, they will remember the multitasking menu, but the multitasking key having that awful lag. 5.1.1 finally fixed that for me, and the memory management got better as well. It was funny. I was reviewing my Note 5 and my Note 4, and the Note 4 was outperforming my Note 5. But like you guys said, it's just really good flagship. The camera's still amazing because it was so ahead of its time. The screen was so ahead of its time. The processor was great, and the 805, I would still pick it over the 810 because it's just more stable. It's good. It still maxes out most games. Now the Exynos 420, oh my god, it's a beastly processor, but still the 805 is more than fine. And you can lower the resolution and make it a little better graphics performance. And the best part about all these phones is that they're only getting cheaper. You know, and you can pick up a Note 4 for $400, $500 sometimes if you want, and that's just a great deal. You know, for a phone that's so powerful, so good, so all around good, all day battery life, removable battery life. It's just great. There's really nothing like it in the sense that for the price, you're still getting an amazing phone. You know what I mean? So, you know, Corey, you're upgrading to a new phone. You might want to consider an old phone. Right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I've liked the phone that I've got right now, so that could be it. I don't know about the form factor. I have to decide. I'm sure eventually I'll get a phone that's that large, but I don't know if I want that now or not. It's tough to tell. It's a big size.
Yeah, I mean, you handled my Note 5, and it fits pretty well in the hand. It's just great. The Note 5 it fits in the hand great. To be honest, I feel like the Note 5 is so well spec'd now that it will be future-proof for a while, and that's the thing. Devices just keep getting more and more future-proof. Brett, you mentioned that we need something that makes use of the hardware, and I mean, Android, they're only optimizing it more and more. At least they should be. But KitKat optimized it, Lollipop optimized it a little bit more, and low-end devices come with those OS, and they're pretty good. They're pretty fast. They work, unless you know it's unless they got a Snapdragon 615. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. It's just a good deal that the prices are just generally going down. Ash, what do you think? What's your favorite mid-range phone? Because I know that you also do a lot of reviews of mid-range devices.
My favorite if you could actually call a Xiaomi Mi 4 a mid-range phone, which some people do, then I'd say that's my favorite. 801 is not technically mid-range, but yeah, it's priced at around $200 and still packs quite a punch. Again, 615 phones that are the current so-called mid-range, not my favorite, not really a fan of 615. I still feel that for the price, you're getting a better deal with an 801 than a 615. 615 is basically octa-core and 64-bit, and Apple did it. Let's follow up with something. Not a fan.
You know, Corey, there's one piece of advice I do have for you, though. When you upgrade, do not upgrade to a Moto E.
Yeah, that would not be very good. It's tough. It's almost like you're rolling the dice these days when you're buying a phone. You don't know how likely is it that you're going to get the next big upgrade. Even with the Moto E, when they're selling that with a promise that, hey, we're going to make sure that your Moto E stays up to date after you buy it. That's an exact quote of what they said. And here we are 8 months later, and they're not apparently not going to upgrade to Marshmallow.
Yeah, and it's something that's affecting the flagships too. I mean, the Moto X is, you know, on AT&T and Verizon, they said that they're not going to be getting the updates. Now, I mean, I think everybody can be in agreement with this, that we're fully expecting Motorola to say, oh, sorry, we didn't mean that. We're going to go ahead and push out updates to them. But, you know, are they setting a bad precedent for the future going forward that, you know, you may buy a $500-$600 device and just never see updates after, you know, 11, 12 months?
Well, I got a solution from you. You just need to head to xda-developers.com. Now, I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding, but yeah. And it gets particularly nasty when you get carriers into the mix. And at the same time, we got this whole talk about the security patches and the weekly security patches and how HTC said that it was quite unrealistic. Unrealistic or not, I think that they're needed, and especially because, you know, we see security issues come up every day, almost. I mean, not every day, but you know, they come up so frequently. And Stage Fright B2 came out as well with the MP4 vulnerability, and it just keeps happening. And we want security into into Android, to push it into enterprise, to nab that from the other manufacturers, and BlackBerry can help there as well. So, Brett, how's the situation like in Australia with the carriers?
Yeah, in terms of carriers in Australia, we are pretty upside down, for lack of a better pun. But in terms of getting updates, they're very slow. Lollipop for Note 4 only came out, like Lollipop as in 5.0.1 came out a couple of months ago, to give you an idea of how far behind we are. And like, it makes me feel worried a bit that we're dragging the ball, because Microsoft have carrier updates. They said, yep, we're just going to go do it. Apple from day one said, yep, we're going to do it, and they could. And then, and you know, is it about time for Samsung to set a precedent and go, okay, we're going to do this. You got to do it or not for us, and come to the party. I don't know. It feels like a big manufacturer needs to come out and say, here's my Android phone. I'm going to push updates.
You know, and it was pretty crazy though that you know, when HTC initially came out and said that it was difficult for carriers to push out updates on a monthly basis, and you know, a lot of us kind of laughed at that. But unfortunately, Samsung and LG have kind of proved them right, because they haven't done anything as far as pushing out their monthly updates. What about you guys over there in India, Ash? How is the update situation and the carriers affecting updates over there?
We don't have carrier locked phones, so it's mostly SIM-free unlocked phones that we get. So it's when the brand pushes out an update, we get it. So we don't really have much of a situation here.
Yeah, in my home country, Argentina, we do have carrier lock phones. But what's funny is that most of the time, it's just like a matter of the updates that they push. One of the reasons I became a flashaholic, and one of the reasons I really like that, is because I had a Galaxy S3 and I was with a carrier called Claro, and they just wouldn't push updates. So you know, it was a GTI 9 300, and just like that. I mean, it was just the Exynos S3, no actual modifications to the hardware or anything. I could just flash whatever ROM I wanted to that, and I mean, that phone still has so many ROMs today. I mean, oh my God, just a few that got Lollipop before any of my other devices. So yeah, there's definitely that problem with the carriers and the security updates as well, especially in countries that do have carriers that do lock down the devices, as is the case with the U.S., Verizon, AT&T, and you know, I'm kind of scared that T-Mobile's going to start doing it after all those statements. You know what I mean? Anyway, yeah, I just hope that they can make it happen, so we get better updates, faster updates. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It's something we can all hope for. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. We had a great time discussing the various impressions and updates with Android Marshmallow, a lot of the new Microsoft devices, updates in general, actually, with Marshmallow around the corner, different OEMs and carriers, and the V10 also on our minds, too. So we'll see what next week brings us, but thanks for listening to us this week. And we're going to do our final plugs here. So I'm Corey Fiok. You can find me on Twitter at CodismsDev, and you can find me on the Google Play Store under Codisms.
Yeah, and I'm Ash, and you guys can catch me at C4ATAG. I've got a bunch of reviews coming up: the iPhone 6s, the Moto X Style, Redmi Note 2, Mi 4C, and whatnot. So, and thank you guys for having me here. It was great.
Cheers, Ash. I'm Brett, or Super H. My Twitter handle is Super H, and be good to hear from you.
And I'm Daniel Marchena. Again, I'm from the Android subreddit, but you can find me pretty much anywhere at Ultimax98, and I also do YouTube reviews at Daniel Marchena.
All right, and I'm Mario Serafero, editor-in-chief at xda-developers.com. You can find me on XDA. You can find me on Reddit. My handle is Tuckingan. I'm usually posting new articles every week, and if not, I'm just editing behind the scenes, making sure that everything works.